Hello, and welcome back to yet another NFL video. Listen, man, we are starting off a new series on this channel, okay? And believe me when I tell you this is going to take a while, okay? What I'm going to do here is I am going to quickly, not in depth, I'm going to wait till the offseason to do an in-depth recap, a quick recap of every single NFL team season. This is obviously now the majority of teams, their season is over. It will take a while. So I'm going to start with the teams that their season's already over, and then I'm going to move towards the teams that, I'm going to finish off with the teams, who are in the playoffs and recap their seasons because they obviously got to include the playoffs for the teams that made the playoffs. So I figured what better team to start off with than my favorite team, who, even though they won 10 games, still missed the playoffs, and that's the Seattle Seahawks. One thing I like about the series is that I didn't have any. I'm not going to make a whole Google slide presentation for you. I'm just going to sit here and talk because, brother, please believe me, I have copious, and I mean copious notes regarding this topic. So, leave a like if you enjoyed, subscribe if you're new, and let's get right into it. First, by the way, this series is going to take months because even if I do one of these like every 2 days, which is probably what's going to happen, I mean, 32 times 2, that's 64, and I'm not going to do every 2 days. It's going to take like 7, 8, 9 weeks probably. Anyway, so let's get right into it. Where do I start with the Seahawks? Maybe I should start with my expectations going into the season. I definitely, my hopes were high last season, right? And they let me down. They only won 9 games. And so I didn't really know what to think with new head coach Mike McDonald coming in. I definitely thought, just looking at the talent on the roster, if we stayed relatively healthy, for example, our quarterback played all 17 games, I think I had us going 11-6 was my final prediction. Okay, so pretty close to that mark. I definitely, if you would have told me, Rod, if you would have told me, Rod, we're going to go 10-7, right, and the Niners are going to fall apart and collapse and have a terrible season, I absolutely would have thought, oh, we're a shoo-in for the playoffs then. That did not happen. Now, even though we missed the playoffs, there's still a lot of positives to take away from this season. Okay, 10 wins with the first-year head coach. You can't discredit that. You can't, and it just you have to call it for what it is. That is impressive. No matter what way you slice it, first-year head coach, 10 wins. I'm happy with that. You got breakout seasons from a couple players, including Jackson Smith and Jigba. I am I am over the moon in terms of happiness that he has now broken out and he is living up to what I thought he could be. Zach Charbonnet at the running back position, I thought looked amazing down the stretch. And defensively, Big Cat, Leonard Williams, the veteran, the established defensive lineman, was just a monster for us this season. And arguably, I have not made my all pro list yet, but don't be shocked if Leonard Williams is an all pro from the interior of our Seahawks defensive line. He was a monster this year. But this is the problem. We ended the season with more questions than we started the season with, in my opinion. Let's get into them. A few of which are who will be the new offensive coordinator? We just fired Ryan Grubb. I had a lot of optimism going into the season with him, but I think the facts speak for themselves. We were not good enough offensively, right? So, yeah, I don't. I wish it would have worked out. That's what I'm disappointed. I wish it would have worked out. I like the fact that he came from Washington. I enjoyed watching the Huskies last season, so I was hoping it worked out, but it did not. So now we're gonna have to figure out who our new offensive coordinator is gonna be. Um, Gino's future with the team. I mean, this is one of the biggest, if not the biggest, talking points in terms of the Seahawks as a whole. I believe next year is Gino's last year on a contract, and will he even play, knowing he has no sort of money locked up in the future? That's a big question. So, I mean, let's just get into it right now. How good did Gino play overall? He had a lot of yards, definitely had a lot of yards. His completion percentage was through the roof. His passer rating was not that high, though. His touchdown interception ratio was terrible. The most interceptions that he's thrown as a Seahawk, just out of nowhere, too. I just don't know where he did not turn the ball over like this in the past 2 years. So I don't know where this is coming from. But the last 2 seasons with two different offensive coordinators, he has not lived up to what he did in year one, which is just really surprising to me. I don't know why, but I would not be comfortable at this point in time extending him to a long-term deal. I would be more comfortable maybe with like a 2-year, $60 million extension that would lock him up for 2026 and 2027. But would he be comfortable with that? I don't know. Maybe I think he's a good leader. I want him as my quarterback. I want him to play well, but I don't think he's played to the point that warrants a massive contract extension. So that's a massive question right now with the team. Um, Will Tyler Lockett be back next year? Unfortunately, listen, you will not find many fans that are bigger fans of Tyler Lockett than I am. Tyler Lockett's one of my favorite Seahawks all time. He was one of the most under. Let me tell you something right now. Tyler Lockett had 5 straight seasons of at least 1,000 yards from scrimmage and 8 touchdowns. Show me another player in history, another wide receiver in history that did that 1,000 yards and 8 touchdowns for 5 years in a row and never made a Pro Bowl. Tyler Lockett is incredibly underrated. However, he just had the worst year of his career. He just had the lowest amount of scrimmage yards in his career, and he just tied the least amount of touchdowns. Tyler Lockett in our system right now, with the emergence of JSN and DK being there, he's a wide receiver 3, and he's not a very productive. Well, I guess in terms of wide receiver 3, he is pretty productive, but he is not worth the amount of money we're paying him. So I do believe that Tyler Lockett will be released by the Seahawks. I don't know if he's going to play anywhere else, so maybe we could bring him back on a much cheaper deal. But I think we're looking at a situation where Tyler Lockett either retires or hope I want him to be a Seahawk next year, but I just think that's a less likely scenario. So we might have been looking at Tyler Lockett's last season of his career. And how do we improve offensive line in the secondary? The offensive line certainly was the biggest disappointment, the most upsetting thing about the team this year. And it feels like every year, a different offensive coordinator, this year a new head coach, and still John Snyder, the same problem offensive line. I believe I saw somewhere that we were ranked as like the 30th offensive line in the league. That does not surprise me. The only guy who I'm confident and be like, I want him on my offensive line next year is Charles Cross. He was a top 10 pick who is developing well, and I'm happy with where he is at this point in his career. He is playing like a first round good left tackle. That is it. Everybody else on the offensive line is either replaceable or I need them gone immediately. The right guard position was a disaster. Right tackle got better once Abe Lucas got back healthy. I think center, I want to move forward with Oluwatimi. Left guard, up in the air. Right guard, disaster. I mean, it's just we need help desperately on the offensive line, which is why we'll get into that later. But offensive line still, yet again, year after year, is a disaster. Geno was sacked just as much as any other quarterback besides, Caleb Williams. So offensive line's a disaster. And the secondary, Trey Brown got a shot as our other boundary corner. I was not happy with how he played. He's going to be gone next year, so we need to find another boundary corner in the offseason. Rayshawn Jenkins is probably going to be out. Is probably going to be gone as well. I think we're going to cut him. So we're going to have 2 holes in our secondary, 2 major holes, starters that we're going to have to address one way or another. And just overall the play, I like how Julian Love and Tariq Woolen played. Devon Witherspoon somehow, even though he was our third best DB in my opinion, made the Pro Bowl. I'm not sure how that works. The Pro Bowl is simply a popularity contest. You will not convince me otherwise. That's why I'm going to do my own Pro Bowl on this channel to give it out to the actual deserving players who deserve to make the Pro Bowl. But I digress. Well, let's talk about this. What else? Here's the thing. I feel like any Seahawks fan who calls the season a failure or a disappointment, you're just being unreasonable. Okay. The inconsistency was very frustrating for sure. I'm not denying that. But our defense looked great at times, which is we that was not like the that was not a reality for us the past couple seasons. The Seahawks defense was terrible recently. But I feel like Mike McDonald kind of changed the narrative a little bit. There were a lot of games this year where our defense either just dominated, kept us in the game where our offense wasn't doing anything, or just I was really pleased with how Mike McDonald had our defense looking this season. Okay, and also 10 wins, like I said earlier. Just because we didn't make the playoffs, that's kind of out of our control. We beat the Rams the last week of the season. We had the same record as the Rams. They had some sort of tiebreaker or something. It's like you can't do much more. The loss to the Giants early in the season, that's devastating. Okay, you just can't bounce back from that. But besides that, man, 10 wins, I'm happy with it as a Seahawks fan. But the good part is that we still have a lot of room for growth on both sides of the ball. But defensively, if you look at all the areas, I feel like our linebacker core was just, I mean, we cut both of the linebackers that we started the season out with as our starters, okay, and we still ended up doing pretty good. We made a lot of moves. We cut both our starting linebackers. We made multiple in-season trades for starters like Roy Robertson Harris, Ernest Jones. We made a lot of moves in season, so I feel like going into next season with more consistency will improve our defense overall. Um, Man, the run game though on offense, it's just we gotta have an offensive coordinator who really prioritizes the offensive line and the run game because we have two really good running backs. I mean, Kenneth Walker and Zach Charbonnet, they both should be. I mean, this should be debatably the best tandem in the league. I mean, you got a lot of good. You got Algier and Robinson. You got Gibbs and Montgomery, obviously. You know, Jalen Warren, Najee Harris. But I feel like Zach and Kenneth Walker should be right up there because of how bad the offensive line's been and because just a lack of commitment to the run game. It's like yet again, I'm not satisfied with how well we're doing in that category. Um, so yeah, yet again, I end the season kind of depressed about how our offensive line is. But here's the thing: next year is absolutely the make or break year for Gino, and that's whether or not we extend him. Like if he does not, sign a contract extension, he's just playing next year for a contract, and obviously it's a massive year for him. But even if we do extend Gino, if he goes into next year, and here's the thing: even if he plays at the same exact level next year, we're going to draft a quarterback because he needs to get better. His passer rating is not where it needs to be. The turnover problems are way too high, and our inability, we cannot score in the red zone. I don't know. Pull up the stats the last 3 years since Gino's been the quarterback. I don't care what other teams. I can guarantee you the Seahawks are bottom three in terms of red zone efficiency. Our play calling, whatever the case may be, our turnovers in the red zone, we suck at getting touchdowns in the red zone. So something needs to change. And if Gino does not flip it around next year and really get back to his first year form, his 2022 form, we got to make a decision at quarterback. Um, all I want, brother, all I want, give me an offensive lineman in the first round, and then maybe we can have a run game again. Gino can start playing a little better. Um, in terms of the second, third round, I'd like a cornerback or just a DB in general. I'd also like a linebacker. I mean, if with our first three picks in the first three rounds, please just give me a lineman, a DB, and a linebacker. That's all I want. We do not need any more edge rushers. I don't want us drafting any offensive player that's not an offensive lineman. Just please, O line, DB, linebacker. That's all that I want in the draft. But here's the thing. With all that being said, fan is short for fanatic. I'm going to be more critical of the Seahawks than anybody else, really. But this is still the best that I've felt about the Seahawks in a long time. Like all things considered, like I know I shit on them a lot this video, but I am still really optimistic. And I do think that we're going like I feel like we were treading water for a long time with Pete Carroll. But now I feel like this is the start of something special. Okay. So we have a lot of questions, we have a lot of holes, but 10 wins, I feel like might be the floor under Mike McDonald. And that's very exciting to say. And our schedule next year is a complete cakewalk. I mean, I think we play the AFC and the NFC South out of division. That is layup after layup after layup. So I'm very excited for next season. I'm very excited for what we do in the draft and free agency. We're going to have to make some tough decisions. But as a Seahawks fan, I am happy. I am excited. And yeah, good job, Seahawks. That's my take on the season. So leave a like if you enjoyed, subscribe if you're new, and I will see y'all in the next one. Peace.